them, but again, it was a revenue source.
Yeah.
So we really declared economic warfare, and the president launched a whole range of counterattacks.
They had a 3,600-mile pipeline they wanted to build, and we blocked it.
We blocked it, we stopped it, and they went berserk.
I mean, that would have provided natural gas into Western Europe, and basically Reagan thought this was a crime, that the people of Western Europe and the free world would buy Soviet gas, and that would keep Eastern Europe part of the communist bloc. Yeah. So Reagan said, you're selling your brothers down the river here.
Right, but what we didn't say out loud is, if we can stop the gas pipeline, we can crush their hard currency earnings and wreck their economy. And then the president fired the bullet between the eyes, which was SDI, Star Wars. That was it.
Now SDI, that was March 23rd, 1983. That's when he announces SDI.
That was that
gives
famous
a national
speech.
Now you told me something fascinating about March 24th. You noticed something different.
Well, what the president did on March 23rd, 1983, when he announced SDI, he said, we're going to build missile defense.
Which everybody said you couldn't do.
Which everyone said you couldn't do. Of course, we could. Now, the Russians knew we could do it because they were doing it. Okay, they already had a missile defense program. And the president knew that they had it because we had told them that. So when everyone was screaming it can't be done, they were doing it. Reagan, the political genius, described SDI as a shield over the United States. Actually, it was a lid over the Soviet Union. It meant the missiles weren't going to fly. Okay? He gave that speech the evening of March 23rd. The morning of March 24th, the intelligence reaching my desk changed. They knew it was over. I mean, we were reading the Kremlin's, well, they didn't have email then, but, their phone conversations or whatever our spies could tell us.
And by the way,
they knew it was completely over.
I have to say that very morning, not to pick on him, but it's just got to be, Senator Ted Kennedy went out on the Senate floor and denounced the speech as misleading Red Scare tactics, Hollywood scheme, and Star Wars. And they were all laughing. And
I had Kennedy on my radio, and on my desk are the reports from Moscow showing the Soviet leaders saying, oh no, it's over.
Amazing.
So you had both.
Yeah.
And by the way, the president had both. Because they knew that was the winning hand. So the president deployed our economic and technical prowess and did him in. By the way, it's something interesting. I don't think you and I ever talked about this. Bill was an interesting guy, and he understood human nature. Maybe you're that old and that rich, and you learn a few things along the way. And the same with Reagan. He understood human nature. We were sitting in the office one day, and Bill said, they had a Politburo meeting in Moscow, I think every Thursday. It went on for hours. It must have been like a faculty meeting squared. It would never end. And Bill said, I bet by the time this thing's over, these guys are dead. All they want to do is get in the car, go home to their dacha, and pour themselves a drink. And he said, here we are pushing them on everything. And that was very perceptive. These were old men running the Soviet Union. They were tired.
Very old.
And here's Reagan, this hardy, bluff Californian, all the energy in the world. And we were coming at him from 10 different directions. Yeah. And Bill understood, this is a very human thing. These guys are tired. And it's hard work. It's probably no fun running the Soviet Union. It was getting tired. And he thought, we could push these guys. And that's exactly what we did. And I remember at one point I wrote a memo and I said that, isn't it amazing that at this moment in history, both countries have produced the perfect leader. The Russians produced Andropov, cunning Radovich, the chief of secret police.
Yes.
And we produced this bluff, hardy, cheerful Californian. I mean, you couldn't write a novel where the leaders of the two societies were so perfectly representative of what they were. And Bill's insight was, these guys are tired. If we push them, they'll break. They don't want to fight. And we did.
Now you pushed them in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I don't know what all you can say about Afghanistan.
We pushed them in Afghanistan.
The Soviets invade in December 1979. They're winning. I mean, they are winning in Afghanistan. How could they lose in Afghanistan? And then Reagan, Casey, you guys spend about 1981, 85, 86, 5 years trying to eventually get shoulder-launched missiles.
The Stinger missile.
Stinger
and that
missiles.
was Bill who got the Stinger missile.
Bill got the Stinger
Bingo
missile.
dust.
And
And
that-
wasn't that congressman from Texas? I forget.
Charlie
He just-
Wilson.
Yeah,
Yeah, the movie Charlie
Nice guy,
Wilson.
but he didn't get the Stinger.
Yeah, I mean, that movie should have been called Bill Casey's War.
Yeah, Bill's the guy who got the Stinger.
Tell us the effect of the Stingers and what that did.
Well, again, it was part of this shockwave going the other way, which is, remember, they said what's theirs is theirs, what's ours is up for grabs. Suddenly we're fighting.
We're fighting them.
We're fighting them in their territory.
Yeah, you invaded, now we're
And
going to help
we're fighting.
them.
And again, remember, they were tired. Things weren't going well in a whole range of ways. And suddenly, here come these damn Americans, and now they're shooting down our helicopters or causing our helicopters to be shot down. It wasn't that we beat them militarily, but in any war, what matters is your will to win. That's why we lost in Vietnam. Not that we didn't have the firepower, we lacked the will to win. And here, we were fighting. And, the borders are a little bit sloppy in that part of the world. Not quite sure where the border is and who's on this side or that. And we were pushing it a little bit. And that was the CIA. And again, the Russians were it was more trouble than they could handle.
And Bill Casey is going into places like Egypt and saying, give me AK-47s for the Afghan resistance. Right?
I was with them on that trip, actually. Yeah. But again, it was the point that the Soviet doctrine was it can't come back in reverse. It can only go one way. And the notion that it is going the other way in several places at once was such a jolt to them, and more than they could handle, because when all is said and done, they really were a bunch of old thugs.
So you're blocking the pipeline, you're undercutting oil, you've got SDI.
We're building a 600-ship Navy.
Building a 600-ship Navy. Okay, you got Afghanistan going on, and then wham, Poland, right in the middle of this.
Poland, you could almost say, kick the whole thing off.
Right, exactly. And Poland, now Casey, Reagan, Clark, all you guys, you believe Poland was the linchpin.
Everybody believed Poland was a linchpin. Everybody knew that Poland was the linchpin of the Warsaw Pact. Hey, listen, you can't have a Warsaw Pact without Warsaw, okay?
Right.
If Poland goes, it's over. Everybody knew that. And again, we were fighting them on that. So from the Soviet point of view, they were getting hit 15 different ways.
So your goal in Poland is to keep the solidarity movement alive in Poland. Lech Walesa and his group, and you're thinking that if you could knock down Poland, the first domino, boom, 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 right, the whole block can go down. So how much money did you guys send into Poland?
I don't know what the dollar amount was, but a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
And there was a lot of covert stuff. And I'll stay here as long as you want this evening, but I don't want to spend 10 years in Leavenworth on the way home. So there are some things I can't.
Right, I understand.
But just to give you the flavor of this, okay? And again, you've got to look at this from the point of view of the guys in the Kremlin. They're kind of old, they're not feeling well, and they're getting hit from 100 different directions, and Reagan's got all the energy in the world. Okay? We did a lot of neat stuff at the CIA. Some mornings you had to wake up and say, Bill Casey's running the CIA, Reagan's in the White House, and I can't wait to get to the office, okay? we found, in the mid to late 70s, there was a revival of Christianity in the Soviet Union. And the Christians wanted Bibles, obviously, and of course they couldn't get them. So Christians here in the West were trying to smuggle in Bibles. Christians from the United States, Canada, Australia, places like that. And it was amateur hour. They were doing what they saw in spy movies. They would put false bottoms in suitcases, or they'd stick them up their pants legs or down their skirts, all kinds of crazy things. And they always got caught at the borders. The KGB would confiscate the Bibles, had these big piles of Bibles. And then they went too far. They took all the Bibles that they had confiscated, and they pulped them into toilet paper. Wow. And we found out that that's what they did. They did it simply to stick it to Christianity. I mean, it had no purpose other than that's what we do with your Bibles. That bothered Bill. He was a deeply religious man. It was just, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. He just figured the hell with that. So he went to the other religious man in the administration, and that was the president. And the president apparently looked at Bill and said, "Oh, Bill, if you and your boys could do something about that. If you're going to run a first-class spy service, one of the odd skills you need is the ability to manufacture paper. If you're going to forge a document, passport, visa, driver's license, anything, you not only have to do the print, you've got to chemically match the paper. That's how they get you. When you show your passport, when you go through London Heathrow or something like that, They look at the print. If they don't like what they see, they pass it to the guy in the back room who'll analyze the paper. So you've got to match the paper. The CIA had the most extensive paper manufacturing capability in the world. Could duplicate any paper.
Wow.
Visa, passport, driver's license, ticket to the Super Bowl, anything you want. Okay? So we got cracking on this. Took a few months to get this organized. This was the CIA, MI6 in Britain, and the Vatican.
Wow.
Okay?
Working on Bibles?
Well, they know how to move Bibles, don't they? A few months later, we started moving Bibles into the Soviet Union, literally in semi-trailers.
Wow.
Amateur hours over. We're moving huge volumes. And the KGB, of course, got their hands on some of these. And they did their analysis of the paper and reached the only conclusion was their paper coming out of their factories, because we had precisely matched it. And they were ripping apart their factories to figure out how they were producing all these Bibles on their factories.
It's tremendous.
The point is we were doing stuff like this all the time, okay? And by the way, President Reagan loved that one. I mean, that was just one of the favorites of all. I'm not sure whether that one brought down the Soviet Union.
It's not in his memoirs
neat.
either.
No, you won't find it.
Yeah.
But the point is we were doing things like that all the time, and it just was more than they could handle. And in the end, they just went down. And they turned it over to Gorbachev, who was their bright young guy.
Right.
And at least he had the brains to know he wasn't going to win.
And now, just to throw another, angle into this, then there's Central America, then there's Nicaragua.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
That too.
the Sandinistas. That's another. So I mean, there are literally 15 different ways that you guys were coming at them.
Well, we're coming back at them. Yeah. And again, Reagan completely changed the rules of the game, which is I'm not playing to not lose, I'm playing to win.
So by November 1983, you write a memo, and you write this memo, and it says, the USSR is entering a terminal phase. There's a danger to this. You said a cornered Kremlin might opt for war. That can always happen. On the other hand, you wrote, if present trends continue, we're going to win the Cold War, unquote. November 1983. Pretty good projection.
Well, I
there.
guessed right, yeah.
Yeah.
That was, in my judgment, the most dangerous moment in modern history. There was no previous example of a nuclear superpower going down.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Nobody knew. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. Either they were going to launch, they would do something desperate, or they were going to give up. It had to be one of the two. It was unbelievably dangerous, and people don't realize how dangerous it was.
And people don't appreciate that this thing ended peacefully. I mean, no one would have, if you had told everyone in 1979 that in 10 years the Berlin Wall is going to be down, the Cold War is going to be over, the question would have been how many billions of people died, or how many hundreds of millions died in the nuclear exchange. You get laughed out of the room.
Well, what Reagan did, and this was his great achievement, is he figured out how to let the air out of the balloon slowly. Or the other way to look at it is, you don't want to just step on their oxygen line, but you wanted to squeeze it until they kind of became unconscious and finally the heart stopped beating. Yeah. And Reagan had the political genius to bring down a nuclear power peacefully. Remember, there'd been no other example of that ever happening, so nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right. Especially one with 5,000 nuclear warheads.
Yeah, and they were not nice people. I mean, this was a real problem, and that's what he did. So those were extraordinarily interesting years.
No, I don't think I've ever asked you about your take on Gorbachev. Now, if Andropov hadn't died in 1984, and Reagan Gorbachev coming in eventually in 1985, I mean, we did get lucky. We got a peaceful general secretary, right?
You did.
What's your take on Gorbachev?
My take is different from what a lot of people have. The way to look at Gorbachev is this. Let's say you've got an automobile manufacturing company, and they keep producing cars with square wheels, so they're not selling very well, and they won't change it. Well, finally, they bring in a chief executive who says, look, that's so stupid. Not going to have square wheels anymore. And everyone goes, oh, great, fantastic, genius. And they bring out the plans for the round wheels. And this new guy takes one look, he says, no, that's too radical, I won't go that far. And they wind up with oval-shaped wheels. Well, it's better, but it ain't going to make it. That was Gorbachev.
Sure.
He knew the square